turned 49 this week and I can see it in the mirror. I've been able to see it for a while now, actually. I mean, obviously, my hair is gray. I stopped coloring it a few years ago and never looked back. I definitely have some things going on with my skin. I'm starting to see lines and a few little age spots. They're just things that happen as you get older. But what's really surprising about that is as those things are starting to pop up, I'm not feeling like my confidence is going away. Like, I almost feel like it's getting stronger. And so as I approach 50, I'm really learning that my confidence is tied in more to how I show up than what I look like or what I accomplish. I think there's a lot of acceptance that goes along with getting older because there are certain things that we just can't change, can't help. I mean, sure, there are, I could color my hair. There are surgical procedures and injections and all kinds of fancy facial treatments and things like that. But the fact of the matter is we're getting older regardless. And for example, my hair, I first of all, obviously my hair is very, very curly. That's been a fight of mine for my entire life. But the gray hair also runs in my family. My father has been gray pretty much my whole life, or as far back as I can remember. And I started turning gray when I was probably around 18 years old. So I was coloring my hair probably even earlier than that, but it was just a constant in my life. Every 4 weeks or so, I was coloring my hair to cover the grays. And as I got into my early 40s, there were a couple of times where I tried to just let it go. I didn't want to keep coloring it. It was expensive, it was a pain, it was time consuming. But ultimately, every time I did it, I was like, no, I'm not ready for that. A few years ago, I decided, you know what, I'm just going to go for it. Cut my hair really, really short. It made it easier for it to grow out. And now I'm trying to grow out the curls again. But I have to say, I'm so glad that I did it. It's obviously saved me a lot of money, a lot of time, but it's just so freeing also. I just feel like I don't have to stress about covering grays anymore because even when I would color it, within a couple of weeks, I would start to see like this little white streak here, and there would be grays popping out, and I don't have to worry about that anymore. And I almost feel like it's lifted this gigantic burden, and I don't really care so much about what it looks like. Does it make me look like I'm older? I don't know, but I get a lot of compliments on it, and I'm happy with it. And I think that's what's most important as far as appearance, as long as you feel good about it. It doesn't matter what other people think. And it also doesn't matter what other people are doing. You don't need to compare yourself to anybody else. That's definitely a recipe for disaster and upset and, just frustration. What do you enjoy about your looks, and what can you do to maintain that? And as I mentioned, I have noticed changes in my skin, in like the firmness of not just the skin on my face, but everywhere. I mean, I'm just not as like tightened and toned and glowing as I was when I was younger, but I'm not supposed to be. And I'm okay with that. And I think that there's such a pressure to resist all of that. I am constantly seeing in my Facebook feed and my Instagram feed all over the place ads for anti aging formulas, for specific skincare. There's tons of messaging around perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, and all of these supposed problems that we need to solve that go along with that. But I'm not really seeing it as a problem. And I think, I mean, of course, there are times where I'm like, oh, I wish I were 20 years younger, or I wish I looked a certain way. But for the most part, I'm not letting that stuff bother me. And I think that's another thing that's been really freeing for me because I'm not stressing about something that I really can't control. And I think that confidence around aging, like actual physical aging, is really centered on acceptance, and it's centered on self respect. The acceptance is obviously a very big piece of that because, again, this is not something that we can necessarily control. We might be able to delay it a little bit, we might be able to hide it a little bit, but for the most part, time marches on. And what's that quote from Steel Magnolias that Dolly Parton says? I think it's like, time marches and it's marching right across your face. It's true. I mean, you can tell that I'm not 29 anymore. I'm 49. And that's the whole thing, is that I'm not trying to look 49. I'm trying to look the strongest and healthiest 49 that I possibly can. There are lots of other things that are going on besides outward aging. There's a lot that goes on the inside as well. And so I want to shift gears and talk about that a little bit, primarily around confidence, because it can be really normal, I think, to really start to feel less confident as we get older. Have I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish by this age? Have I done all of the things? What am I doing next? Where am I heading? What are my goals? And those are things that I think about a lot. And I think a lot of it comes down to energy, because as we get older, we may not have as much energy as we used to have. And so we need to prioritize the things that we do put our energy into. And for me, that means that my time is much more intentional. I don't like to waste a lot of time, because I like to, especially if I am feeling particularly good or particularly energetic, I want to be able to use that energy, to my benefit. And I think that overcommitting my time and trying to do too much, which is something I did for years and years, it feels like there's a higher cost to that I really don't want to mess with. Doing less has strengthened my confidence, because I'm able to accomplish more and it just feels more meaningful. I'm not chasing every little whim or every little idea that I have. And if you've known me for a while, you know that that's something I used to do a lot of. And I burn myself out. And I just feel so much more at peace now, but I also feel this much greater sense of accomplishment. And so when I really narrowed my focus and started really being honest with myself about what was important to me and what really actually made me feel good, those are the things that I focus on. Those are the things that I can accomplish with what much more ease, because I'm not chasing every little thing and trying to do everything. So um, I think that narrowing your focus, if you are feeling stretched, then can really make a difference for you. And it's really when I began to narrow my focus that I stopped trying to like carry everything, and I began to trust myself more, because I was able to follow through on the things that I committed to. And that's not just me trusting myself, but other people as well. And not that I was ever one to not honor my commitments, but I was just spread so thin that I might not complete things in a timely manner, or I might not do things with a focus that specific task deserved. And I think probably the biggest place that showed up for me was with my family, because I always had my phone in my hand or my laptop in my lap. Even if we were doing a family movie night, or even if we were going somewhere. I can remember before we moved down to Central Florida, we used to go to Disney all the time, and I would be on my phone responding to people, working, just doing all kinds of stuff, writing content, making videos. And I wasn't fully present with my family on our vacation. And I know that I had the right intention, because I felt like the harder I work now, the more time I'm going to have with my family later. But that's not necessarily true. And you only have so many precious years with your children. So I'm really glad that I was able to make that switch and do, be able to focus more. But my point really is that it does help you to feel more confident when you narrow that focus, because and you feel confident that you're going to complete the tasks that you've set out to complete. And you know that any time that you spend is intentional time. So that, again, for example, if I'm spending time with my family, that's what I'm doing. I'm spending time with my family. I'm not thinking like, oh, I have to write this email, or, oh, I need to make this post, because I have all of that stuff figured out and scheduled, and I only schedule and make time for the things that are meaningful. You're not necessarily going to feel confident if you're going for a really big goal, or waiting to feel ready, or hoping that your motivation is just going to show up, because that's just not how things work. And I've said this many times, and I'm going to say it again. I don't feel motivated most mornings. I was never really a morning person, but I also found that the mornings are the time when I have complete time to myself. My kids are still sleeping. My husband goes into work early in the morning. So I have time where I can do my workouts. I can, go for a run. I can do my lifting sessions. I can do some yoga. And so I also have that scheduled out and I just stick to that schedule. It's not about me getting up and saying, I can't wait to go for my run. And I do that sometimes, but most days it's not like that. I just know that that's part of my schedule and it's something that's important to me. And I just get up and I do it. And that confidence shows up through that follow through. It shows up when you are able to honor your commitments, when you're able to stick to the plan that you've created and to those action goals that I talked about a few weeks ago in one of my videos. And it's just something that makes it so much easier for you to feel that sense of accomplishment. And with that sense of accomplishment comes the confidence and, being able to follow through, to show up for yourself, to show up for other people. And again, tying back to trusting yourself, because the more you do honor your commitments, the more you know that you can trust yourself to do what you say and what you set out to do. Every time that I complete a run that I had planned or sit down to write something that I had planned out to do or make these videos or stick to my posting schedule on Instagram or whatever it is, every time I do one of those action goals, it builds my trust and confidence in myself that I will follow through on what I've set out to do. And the more that I do that, the more confidence I feel. Many of you may know I have a teenage daughter, and I'm always very cognizant of what I'm modeling for her. Because if I were constantly complaining about what I look like or how I'm aging or any of those types of things, my weight or, all of that stuff, if I were to constantly be complaining about that in front of her, then all that's really telling her is that her looks and comparing that to other people, whether it's older, younger, whatever, um, that's the way to do things. And that's not what I want her to learn. I don't want her to be focused on appearances and looks. It's very important to me that she grow up to be a woman of depth and character. And I think that she is. And, not to say that, I mean, she's a teenager, so she is focused on her looks sometimes, but it's not the most important thing. And I think a big piece of that is because it's not the most important thing to me. And the other thing that I'm modeling for not just her, my whole family, my husband and my son, is that again, that follow through and making sure that they know they can count on me, that I know I can count on myself, and so that I'm a strong, confident woman, and that is a big piece of our family and how they can count on me. I want my family to see a woman who trusts herself, believes in herself, isn't constantly making comparisons to other people, who is grateful for what she has and not feeling like a sense of lack because of things that might be missing. I'm not trying to be someone who I'm not. I am very much accepting of the fact that I'm getting older. I'm okay with that. I actually had a really sweet conversation with my father on my birthday this week. My father's 77, and he had seen a post of mine talking about getting older. And he said, everyone complains about getting older, but it's really not so bad. And so if my father can say that at 77, I sure can say it at 49. And I really do believe it. I feel like the more that I step into myself and the more that I really focus on what's important, what really matters, and the more that I build that confidence, the better I feel about myself and who I am. And I have, fewer bad moods and feelings of, not good enough or, things that we all wrestle with, right? We all have those moments where we feel like we're not good enough or we're not smart enough or we haven't accomplished as much as we want to. And so bringing it back to those really small action goals and focusing on the things that are really important that you've identified for yourself can really make that difference in your confidence, in how you feel about yourself. And then, as you get older, you don't feel so much of like that ticking clock that, like, oh, I'm running out of time to do these things, or um, feeling like you're just not doing the things that maybe you wanted to do. And so that's really where I'm at right now. I think that the confidence and, feeling good about myself has really just made me a happier person. So let's bring this all together, because I know I've talked about a few different things here. I very firmly believe that the fastest route to confidence is learning to trust yourself. You do that by setting small action goals that are easily attainable. So, again, for example, let's say that you're somebody who wants to go back to school. So you set up these small action goals to get yourself there. So maybe you start looking at online programs that align with what you want to study. And so you do that for week one. And then maybe week two, you start reaching out to those different institutions or researching your plan. And then maybe your next step is to apply, look into financial aid options if you need them, maybe talk to an academic advisor at the institution. So you see what I'm saying? Your goal isn't, I'm going to get a diploma. Your goal is different every week. And it's just like each one is bringing you a little bit closer to that goal. Those are the kinds of things that I think really do build that confidence, because instead of saying, like, oh, I wish I had gone to school when I was younger, I could have had a degree, I could have had a better job, you know, whatever you might be telling yourself in that instance. But as you start to do these small things, you're bringing yourself closer, instead of just like wondering what if, because that doesn't do anybody any good. It doesn't change anything. It's taking that action. And so that's really where you're going to build your confidence, because you know that you're taking the steps towards the larger goal, but you're not so focused. Because if you were so focused on that end goal, it's far away, right? Like if you never went to college before and you have a high school diploma, nothing wrong with that. But if you decided that you wanted to go to college, it's going to be 4 years plus time away from your family, time away from your job, a lot of work. And so that can get kind of overwhelming. But if you start to think about, just those smaller steps and doing a different step every day or every week, then you start to build that momentum. And it's not necessarily motivation, because there might be a day where you don't feel like picking up the phone and calling that academic advisor to get more information. But because you've set out to do that, you do it. And then you start to trust yourself. You see what I'm saying? And that can apply to absolutely any goal. But it's not focusing on that big end goal. It's focusing on the process to get you there that is really going to start to build that up. So I hope that's helpful. Feel free to leave comments below if there's anything that I can help with. If you have questions about any of that content, you can also jump over to my Substack, where I write a lot more about this. But again, I'm doing this to hopefully be relatable and helpful. A lot of these things have helped me, and so I want to spread that around and share it. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week with a new video.